What if the world's most trusted financial institution bet everything on a lie? A lie so simple a child could have devised it. A lie built on a single, undeniable truth. Oil floats on water. In 1963, this simple trick didn't just fool a few inspectors. It brought Wall Street to its knees, erased fortunes overnight, and threatened to topple a global empire. This is the story of how a high school dropout from the Bronx, with no army of hackers or insider connections, orchestrated one of the most audacious frauds in history. A fraud that, when unraveled, revealed a truth far more shocking than the crime itself. That in the world of high finance, what you see is rarely what you get. How did a butcher break Wall Street? And what exactly was hiding just beneath the surface? The story begins not in a glittering Wall Street boardroom, but here, amidst the grit and hustle of the Bronx. This is where Tino de Angelis, the son of poor Italian immigrants, learned his first lessons about value. At 16, he dropped out of school to work his family's meat counter. He weighed cuts of beef, wrapped orders in brown paper, and watched customers haggle over every last penny. But Tino was learning something else, something the customers never suspected. He was learning that in the modern world, the paper was more important than the product. A stamped invoice mattered more than what was actually sitting in the box. The signature on a form was worth more than the meat itself. Paper was power, and Tino was a quick study. By 1948, he spotted his first big opportunity. The post-war American government was feeding its children through the National School Lunch Program. They needed suppliers, and they needed them fast. Tino took over a failing company, Adolf Goebel, and with a swagger that would define his career, secured a contract worth $32 million. He promised prime beef. What he delivered was something else entirely. 2 million pounds of uninspected pork, chicken, and offal, falsely labeled as USDA approved. He even built a mechanized assembly line, not for efficiency, but to churn out massive quantities of substandard meat. Rotten cuts worth pennies were sold for top dollar. The government checks rolled in, fat and fast. The scheme, of course, collapsed. Federal inspectors discovered the fraud. The company went bankrupt. Tino was banned from all future government contracts, but he walked away with cash in his pocket and a lesson seared into his brain. If you control the paperwork, you control reality. By 1955, Tino was thinking bigger, much bigger. He leased this rusting tank farm on the desolate marshes of Bayonne. He named his new venture Allied Crude Vegetable Oil. His business was simple: buy government-subsidized soybeans, process them into cooking oil, and ship it to hungry nations under the Food for Peace program. On the surface, it was a legitimate, even noble enterprise, and for a time, it was. Tino became the undisputed King of Soy, controlling nearly 3/4 of America's vegetable oil exports. 361 million pounds shipped annually. He was a titan of industry, but the legitimate business was just a front, a stage for a much grander illusion. Tino wasn't just shipping oil, he was building a weapon. He needed cash, mountains of it, for a plan of breathtaking audacity. The plan was elegant, ruthless, and leveraged to the hilt. He would use his massive oil inventory as collateral for loans. With that borrowed money, he would buy futures contracts, betting that the price of soybean oil would go up. The sheer volume of his buying would in itself drive the price up, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then, at the peak, he would cash out, pay back the loans, and walk away a billionaire. The only problem? The oil, the collateral for this entire financial skyscraper, wasn't real. To pull this off, Tino needed a partner, not a co-conspirator, but a symbol. A name so trusted, so utterly beyond reproach, that no one would dare question it. He found it in American Express. In 1963, American Express was more than a company. It was a promise. Their travelers' checks were as good as gold, and their field warehousing division offered a service that was the bedrock of commodity trading. They would inspect a company's inventory, be it grain, cotton, or in this case, oil, and issue a warehouse receipt. That piece of paper was a sacred document, a guarantee that the goods existed. Banks accepted these receipts as if they were government bonds. Tino de Angelis made Allied Crude their biggest client. And so, the greatest commodity fraud in American history began. Here's how the trick worked. Most of Allied's 139 tanks were filled with seawater, pumped directly from the filthy harbor. Floating on top was a few feet of actual golden vegetable oil. When the American Express inspector arrived, he'd lower his dipstick. It would come up coated in oil. He'd record the tank as 90% full and move on. He never felt the salt water lurking just below. But that wasn't even the cleverest part. When auditors scheduled inspections, Tino's crew would spring into action. Hidden valves, a secret circulatory system, connected the tanks. They would pump the same few thousand gallons of real oil from one tank to the next, always staying one step ahead of the inspectors. An elaborate, industrial-scale shell game. The same oil was counted 5, 10, even 100 times over. By late 1963, Allied's warehouse receipts claimed 1.8 billion pounds of soybean oil in Bayonne. The tanks couldn't physically hold that much. It was a mathematical impossibility. Government analysts noticed. They whispered. They wrote memos. But the memos went nowhere. Why? Because every single one of those impossible receipts bore the stamp of American Express. Tino wasn't just trading anymore. He was the market. His futures positions exceeded the total amount of soybean oil that could possibly exist. He was leveraged 3 times past reality. The price of soybean oil climbed relentlessly. On Wall Street, they called him the salad oil king. No one knew how he'd done it, but the paperwork, stamped by American Express, was undeniable. His empire was built on whispers and phantom shipments, rumors of secret deals with the Soviets, of shadowy foreign connections. The more mysterious he seemed, the more powerful he became. But inside this house of cards, the first cracks were beginning to show. At a respected Wall Street firm, Ira Haupt, every single one of their 20,700 customer accounts was tied to Tino's oil. Their fortunes and their clients' life savings rested on the belief that the oil was real. On October 21st, a low-level American Express technician noticed something. The weight sensors on tank 13 didn't match the volume on the receipts. The numbers were off, wildly off. He typed a memo. He flagged a security tip. He sent it to his supervisor. The memo vanished. No one responded. 3 days later, as Tino de Angelis toasted his own genius in a Newark diner, another inspector, perhaps driven by a nagging doubt, decided to do something that should have been done years before. He decided to physically verify what was really inside Tank 13. He had no idea he was about to light the fuse on a financial time bomb, set to detonate just 72 hours before the most shocking political event in American history. November 19th, 1963. The inspectors arrived unannounced. There was no time to pump the oil, no time to stage the theater. They unbolted the hatch. They lowered the weighted tape. It hit water. He dropped it again. Deeper. More water. He let it sink to the very bottom. There was no oil, just harbor water and rust. "We have a problem," he said flatly into his radio. The words echoed from the marshes of New Jersey to the towers of Manhattan. The house of cards did not collapse. It detonated. Allied crude filed for bankruptcy. Soybean futures cratered. Margin calls exploded. Ira Haupt and Company was insolvent. The life savings of its 20,700 customers were gone. 16 financial firms would eventually collapse. And then, 3 days later, on November the 22nd, 1963, everything stopped. The assassination of President Kennedy froze the nation. The New York Stock Exchange halted trading. The world forgot about soybean oil, but the damage was done. The financial Black Friday was not caused by the tragedy in Dallas, but by a butcher's seawater scheme. Federal investigators descended on Bayonne. They pried open all 139 tanks. They found sludge, salt, and empty air. The receipts claimed billions of pounds of oil. The tanks held barely enough to fill a backyard swimming pool. Total losses, $180 million. In today's money, nearly $2 billion. Tino de Angelis was arrested that evening in the same Newark diner, a smear of mustard still on his chin. He had orchestrated the largest commodity fraud in history. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to a mere 7 years in prison. He served less than 4. But the most incredible part of this story isn't what happened to Tino. It's what happened to American Express. Their reputation was in ashes, but then their CEO, Howard Clark, made an announcement that stunned Wall Street. American Express would honor every single fraudulent warehouse receipt. They would pay out $60 million from their own reserves to make the victims whole. Analysts predicted bankruptcy. Instead, the opposite happened. Trust in American Express didn't just survive, it multiplied. The scandal that should have destroyed them became the ultimate proof of their integrity. And someone was watching. A young, unknown investor from Omaha, Nebraska. His name was Warren Buffett. Seeing the immense power of the American Express brand, he invested heavily, buying 5% of the company during the depths of the scandal. It became his largest single investment to date, a bet that would ultimately be worth billions. Tino de Angelis didn't need a supercomputer or a team of elite hackers. He just needed a garden hose, some harbor water, and the certain knowledge that busy people don't look past the surface. He understood that in a world drowning in data, we trust the paperwork, the algorithm, the brand. We trust the simple story told by a few feet of golden oil. What other convenient lies are floating on the surface right now?